Hello, welcome to MENA 2021. My name's Matt Chinnery. It's my pleasure to be here today and to take you through a little demonstration and presentation of the ZeroFox External Threat Intelligence Platform. Over the last 20 years, organisations including financial services, retailers, media and entertainment, and even the government have undergone major digital transformation. Nearly all now offer mobile and web applications to make customer access easier, transactions smoother, and their services more collaborative. These same organisations have aggressively adopted social media and digital channels to engage with customers and partners. This dramatic shift leads to a massive public digital footprint and attack surface on social media and all other external digital platforms. Public platforms that are largely ungoverned, unmonitored, and unprotected by the existing security perimeter. As adoption of public platforms grows, attackers have found opportunity. Not only have threats grown, ZeroFox has ramped up mitigation and disruption efforts to address these evolving threats, increasing takedown volume to 150,000 takedowns per quarter to address phishing, impersonation, fraud, scams, and more. In order to address the growing attack surface and the external threats on public platforms, organisations need a comprehensive solution focused on protection, intelligence, and disruption. ZeroFox protects brands, executives, domains, assets, and data by identifying threats like impersonations, multi-channel phishing campaigns, and data leakage on the dark web, alerting you to those threats and taking action on your behalf. Security teams need access to data and intelligence to understand global and tailored threats and make smarter decisions. ZeroFox's team of 150 plus threat analysts, speaking over 27 languages, create advisories, reports, in-depth analysis, and vulnerability assessments at a global and individual scale every day. Disruption is what brings all of this together. It's not enough to have awareness of threats or even address threats at an individual level. ZeroFox focuses on the attacker's infrastructure, addressing the individual threat like a fake account or phishing email, and takes it a step further, blacklisting, removing associated domains, and more to thwart future attacks as well. The culmination of those three buckets in our comprehensive solution, as you can see, ZeroFox provides protection, intelligence, disruption, and tailored services to enable those solutions. We will drill into the specifics of each of those categories in just a minute, but before we do, I wanted to speak for a minute on the specifics of our solution. It all begins and ends with the ZeroFox platform sitting right at the center of this diagram. The platform ingests data from the surface, deep and dark web, as well as social media, mobile app stores, and more. Combined with our global data lake of over 20 years of historical threat data, the ZeroFox platform churns through massive data loads using artificial intelligence and our rules engine to trigger alerts on the specific use cases relevant to your business. Every alert that comes through the ZeroFox platform is then analysed, triaged, and escalated by our on-watch managed services team. All ZeroFox customers benefit from this service. We maintain an app library of hundreds of intelligence data sources, disruption partners such as web hosts and registrars, and integrations with top TIP, SIM, SOAR, and other technology partners to seamlessly integrate into your broader security technology stack. The culmination of all of this is a comprehensive security solution that provides the protection, intelligence, and disruption necessary to dismantle external threats. ZeroFox offers comprehensive protection packages, from enterprise brand and reputation protection, allowing you to safeguard your enterprise against brand abuse, spoofed domains, impersonations, phishing, and hacked accounts, broadening into external threat protection and intelligence to ensure visibility, protection, and intelligence to address data leakage, credential compromise, and vulnerabilities, and physical and executive security services to gain situational awareness into physical threats against executives, locations, events, and even travel plans. ZeroFox provides global and tailored actionable intelligence. All customers receive access to a daily stream of advisories, reports, breach notifications, and vulnerabilities directly in the ZeroFox platform, in your inbox, or on your phone. Customers seeking additional tailored threat intelligence can benefit from our managed threat intelligence services. With a team of expert threat researchers who speak over 27 languages, performing deep dive reports and threat assessments, customers that need one-off intelligence can leverage our on-demand investigations also. ZeroFox works on your behalf to not only identify threats, but take down offending profiles, accounts, posts, sites, and applications. Going a step further, we not only address the immediate threat, but work to disrupt the entire infrastructure of the attack, taking down the associated domain, blacklisting, and much more. Now, let's dive into the demo. So as you will see, I've logged into my ZeroFox platform and I've been taken to the dashboard screen. Essentially, the dashboard screen basically has two purposes. It allows us to get an executive summary of what's been going on over a certain date and time range, and it also serves as a navigation point around the platform from here on. Those time and date references you see up here, we can look at the last 30 days or the last 24 hours. And of course, the metrics and the numbers will change, but ultimately it's going to show you how many posts, accounts, links, and images have been analyzed by the rules engine. And then ultimately, the ticker tape you see is going to show us the number of alerts that have fallen into each of these categories. And you can drill down further into the categories and you can actually click on the numbers you see with the lines underneath them to take you down to those alerts in question and action them accordingly. But as an analyst, when I come into this console, I'm obviously focusing on this big 65 with the red background over here. This is escalated alerts, and this is effectively my beginning of my day's work as I come into the system for the day. I can navigate and work through each one of these alerts individually from here. If I click on one of these, it's going to drill me down to the alert in question, or of course I can go out to the alerts console and add any filters and sorts to look at these in date and time order or severity order as necessary. If we take a look at some of the statistics that we have got here, you see we are looking at alerts or collected content, and we can view that based on network, based on entity, based on rule, or based on a risk rating. The term entity is a term that you will become very familiar through your ZeroFox journey. In fact, an entity is something you want to protect. So with ZeroFox, you would add entities to the system, and as you can see by this next widget, they could be brands, they could be domains, they could be executives, they could be locations, products, email addresses, or IP addresses and host names, amongst other things. But essentially, it's anything you want to protect. You'll then see the next section of data shows us the top entities that are being targeted. And of course, you see here the top terms that are being used to target those entities. When we look at sort of takedowns and we want some sort of feedback, as you start requesting takedowns, you will start seeing the feedback down here under takedown metrics. And again, we can view that based on network, entity, and rule. You can look at these through requested, successful, and potentially denied takedowns along the way. It starts our takedown process, and it starts our feedback loop in essence, which is further highlighted under the Remediations tab when we get to that. But to take this last tile here, this last widget, the Alpha Team Research, if we browse out to this particular piece of work, we can start seeing that the Alpha Team are a team of data scientists. They're a team of threat hunters that are constantly looking at indicators of compromise, new and emerging attack vectors, and just indicators across the whole of the cyberspace. You'll see here this is a data breach that was labeled this. It has 22 million email addresses have been accessible through an Elasticsearch portal, and this was the latest piece of content that our alpha team released. If we actually go back to what we call the advisories here, it will show you that there is a lot of content, and they're generally producing research, they're producing white papers and blogs 2 or 3 times, in some cases a day, but at least 3 or 4 times a week. This is normally published out to our console and out to our mobile application before it goes to our social media feed, before it goes out to our blog, and so you can always be guaranteed that you've got the latest information. It also goes some way to back up the fact that the automation has got humans in the background that are actually digging this stuff out. And of course, if we find anything critical, we can always write a rule within our rules engine to add that back in along the way. In fact, we actually discovered the recent Zoom bombing data breach, where people can sort of get into your Zoom meetings without passwords and all that good stuff. And within 24 hours, we'd actually written a rule to protect against it. Now, if we come and take a look at within the alpha team, part of their research sits within the vulnerabilities section here, which is basically us going out and querying various databases, looking at various chatter on maybe the dark web or social media to look at where there are known new vulnerabilities within software and hardware. If we take one of these, we can drill into it, and it's going to give us more information around that particular vulnerability, along with reference links that take us out to be able to download that firmware or download that patch that we might need for that that particular software or hardware. And then of course you can push that out via your remote management tool. But coming back to the vulnerabilities section as a whole, we appreciate that this is a lot of data to consume, and it's not normally data that I haven't got any of these products on my network, so I don't need to have this big long list. So we've actually added 2 extra functions. The first function here is available via our new vulnerabilities page that now allow us to search via vulnerability, allow us to search via CVSS score, and even by entity, by vendor, and potentially by product as well, as you see here. The same rules apply. You can click on the ones that you need, and then you can push those out as accordingly. Further to that, we've also added an extra functionality within our entity configuration that's going to allow you to add your technology stack to the product. It means that you can add in the various Cisco routers and switches you have, the various Microsoft products you have, and of course we can then extrapolate that and alert you to the fact that we've found this vulnerability and you have that on your installed base or on your network, meaning you haven't necessarily got to go through the the longhand way of actually searching through this information. Now we also have a breaking news tab, and again breaking news is available on our console and also on our mobile application. It is now just looking at cybersecurity news across lots of data sources, as you see here, Bleeping Computer for one and various other ones along the way. It's not just limited to the alpha team and their research efforts and what they're doing. So it allows real good feedback that we are taking taking it seriously, all angles of this cybersecurity journey that we have in place here. So that's kind of it for the alpha team and sort of the dashboard environment. If I was to come into entities, as I've said a couple of times now, entities are the things you want to protect. So they are, as you see here, within my demo environment, it's very much focused towards Stark Industries, Tony Stark and Iron Man. So it is very much in that mythical universe of the Iron Man Marvel character. We've got in there various locations, various brands like Stark Airways, Credit Union, and of course we have our CEO Tony Stark. Now if I was to pick on him first, you see the first section here allows us to build up our impersonation and account search engine. What this basically means is we first of all have to put in names and aliases so that we have some form of reference. We're going to put in there the names that he goes by on his digital persona. Think of this like his digital footprint or his digital fingerprint. So he's going to go by the name of Tony Stark. He's also going to go by the name of Anthony Stark. But of course, he could also go by his alter ego Iron Man, in any particular form there. It's always good to add in all of his alter egos and anything else you might find. You see then we have the additional entity detail section down here that allows you to now sort of give the first validator that this could be an impersonation. We appreciate, like anyone else, that there may be more than one Tony Stark in the world, and so what we actually do here is we add in various search terms which we would find on his official Facebook profile or Twitter profile or whatever, to start building up a fact that, yep, we found a Tony Stark and they are saying that they are the CEO of Stark Industries, or they are based in New York or whatever. This serves as a first part to that validation exercise, and of course this goes hand in hand with the rules that we set accordingly as well. A further piece of sort of validation is with the image match. I'm just going to remove my test image from there for the time being, and you'll see here that we can add in multiple images to use image analysis and not pixel analysis. We take a holistic view that image analysis is far more accurate than pixel analysis, that kind of, if the hue or the saturation or if the image is flipped, it can be very easily broken. As we come down further, we can now start looking at what we call combined search terms, which are looking at any sort of relevant posts, pages and comments that reference the names that we have above and these comments as well. So if we start hearing people posting or commenting across the digital space about Tony Stark at Stark Industries, we're going to alert against that as well. Of course, we also have a collection of terms called independent search terms that allow us to independently, regardless of the content above, search for these particular words and phrases that you see within here. So as you see here, we could go and look for his email address, or we could go and look for his mobile phone number or whatever it might be. You see there's also a search exclusions tab, which allows us to maybe add in something like the Avengers, if I could spell there. That allows us to then sort of basically ignore any mentions of Tony Stark, any impersonations of Tony Stark that say that he's part of the Avengers. This is good if we want to sort of reduce the amount of false positives, but we might not want to do this at entity level. We may want to bring this into effect at rule level, in which case, I would probably hazard a guess at keeping that off in the first instance and use that as we go through as something you can filter out based on your policies and rules. So when we've got that configured, the accounts and pages section is where we start building up what is officially his accounts. You see here we add in all of his social accounts and various other accounts, including the likes of Zoom and Slack potentially, that he may have. You notice the three that we have here are at the moment unauthenticated. That means that we've added those effectively to view the public view. What that means is we can see whatever he posts to his public news stream, we can see that quite easily. If we want to see private posts, and by private posts I don't mean private messages, I actually mean when he's posting to a subset of his friends or his colleagues, we may need to get this, or we will need to get this account authenticated. The way we do that is either by clicking on the tiles here from his machine himself, or sending him an authentication email for him to do it on his local machine. And it then does, as you see here, does a redirection out to the, in this case, Facebook, where Facebook is now asking us, the ZeroFox platform wants to receive your name, profile picture and timeline posts. Will you agree to this? If you say yes and continue as that particular person, it's going to add that account in authenticated. As you see here, this is going to bring back my my Spurf again, my little character there. But now this means that we can view anything that he posts to a subset of his friends, and more accurately, if anyone's posting to his wall or at mentioning him or DMing him on Twitter, we can see those as well. So we can now start adding in a layer of protection, and with an authenticated account, we can also do inline remediations like deletes, hides, and potentially block users from our feeds. The one thing I want to stress here is this does not store any usernames and passwords. It doesn't request any usernames and passwords, as you see there. It does, in technical terms, an OAuth with the social networks. So it's a tokenized exchange. We get given a token from the social networks that allows us to do this on our CEO's behalf. I'm going to remove my test account from there just for the time being. So then we have the ability to add domains and locations that I'll talk about on specific entities for those. From a dark web perspective, you see here we can add in search terms, either pulling them directly across from the independent search terms or the combined search terms that are there, or by adding in our own terms. Now we can add in our own default terms that can use a Boolean and or not logic. Or we can, as you move across here to things like credit cards, we can only have to worry about partial. So if we had the first 4 digits or potentially the first 6 digits for a BIN number, we can add those in. The same applies for social security numbers, and most importantly, and I find most useful, for email addresses, meaning you only have to put in a partial. So you could put in something like ZeroFox.com, and it will go and search the dark web for any mentions, any breaches of anyone that's got a ZeroFox.com email address. So that's kind of what we have here to work with. The data sources tab you have at the bottom here allows us to turn on any data sources that have been purchased by the customer to work on this particular entity. So that's pretty much where we're at when it comes to an executive configuration. Let me just go and show you what it looks like for some of the other configurations we have. So you see here, if I come into the domains tab, it's going to take me directly to the domains. We generally keep our entities separate because it makes it nice and clean. It means we can just have we can just look at domains here. It allows us, as you see here, to add, top level domains. But again, it also allows us to add substring domains using that and or not logic. And you might want to put in here something like ZeroFox, and then down here you're going to put things like support, HR, sales, anything that you want to see to give you that substring support, like sales.zerofox.com or support.zerofox.com or whatever it might be, to add in there. So that's really all the configuration that it takes on a domain. When we go and look at a location, you see here, if I pull up a location, I'm going to go into the Galaxy Stadium. You'll see it's configured with some other bits and pieces along the way. But one of the main pieces it has is locations set into the configuration. I can add a new location. All I need to do is put in coordinates, or put in a zip code, and enter a name, and it's going to zoom in on a certain area. It's going to allow me to zoom right into 0.1 miles, which effectively is my desk, and it's going to allow me to zoom all the way out to effectively 2 miles. This allows us to put a geofence around that location, which then allows us to monitor that location for chatter around anything that would be of a higher risk or a higher need to know, based on various metrics that you can add into the system, like bad weather or fire or explosions or car accidents, whatever it might be. So that's the main configuration items we have within an entity. We do have a couple of new additions to that, in as much as we now can add in things like email for monitoring purposes. And as you see here, it allows us to configure DMARC, abuse, outgoing, and BEC. The way you do this is you generate your unique identifier within here. I won't do that because this is my demo solution. And then you configure up DMARC and abuse to effectively send emails to our generic email address, which is, in this case, the user ID or the ID of the platform, and then a ZeroFox email address. And of course, you can also add in business email compromise by allowing us to integrate fully into your workflow for Office 365 and G Suite as well. And then finally, the last one that I want to talk about today, in this sort of high-level overview is IP addresses and host names. As you see here, you can put in individual IP addresses, you can put in host names, and you can put in CIDR blocks as we have here, and then that's then going to go and scan for those IP addresses with open ports. We can also look for expired SSL certificates in the same manner based on this configuration. We're probably going to do some separate videos that are going to highlight this configuration and the email configuration in more depth. But just as an overview, these are the things that an entity can have as a starting point. So once you've got that configuration in place, you have to pass that through a policy or a rule. When we come into our policies as a whole, there are several default policies within the ZeroFox platform. As you see, all of the ones with the red ZeroFox logo are the default policies that come with the product. And we're just gonna, there you see. So these are the ones that we have here that come with the product. You can add your own, you can edit your own, and of course we can work with yourselves and your customers in order to write your own policies and rules. If we take one of these default sets of rules as a starting point, every policy has rule groups. As you see here, every rule group contains rules. You have a risk rating to one side that allows you to turn it on and turn it off and set a criticality rating. But the criticality rating is user definable in that sense. So your users can come in and potentially change this criticality rating if they deem necessary. To highlight a couple of things here, these grayed out icons here allow us to go in and to do some real-time actions based on having one of those accounts that has been authenticated, as we spoke about before. So you see here this hacked account self-post. This one is particularly looking at if a Twitter account is hacked and then starts posting out inappropriate or random content. You can see here that that's switched on to critical, and there's a few things we can do along the way. The first thing we can do, of course, is we can assign that to somebody, someone that's configured within our system. We can also send an email to somebody or push this out to somebody that is connected to our system. You'll see here that from a content perspective, this is where we're now able to do those hides and deletes. What that basically means is we can hide that content as it's posted to social. Remember, we're monitoring the API. So if we see anything that breaks the rule in question, which is our hacked account self-post, we are quite easily able to sort of look at that and go, well, that's breached this particular rule. Let's hide that content. And as you see, we can also do that for Facebook as well. Hide that content so that we mitigate the risk. We could delete the content, which, as name implies, deletes it completely. But in deleting content, it also means that there's more visibility to the kind of the attacker. They're going to potentially know that they've been discovered at that point, because it's more obvious if something gets deleted. You can also, and this is more in keeping with someone posting to you, your wall or Twitter, that you can block content. What that actually means is if someone posts something to you, you can delete the content and then block the user. But of course, I always think that hide is probably the best one if you want to do some more analysis or security investigation. You'll also see we have two others. We have request takedown. And as it says here, this works on all networks apart from websites and deep web and breaches. What this allows us to do is, once we know 100% about everything within the ZeroFox platform is configured, and it is the customer's entire estate of email addresses, domains, social media accounts, we can then set up automatic takedown requests, meaning the user doesn't even have to hit the request takedown button. And we also have the ability to turn on the security warning banner in the likes of Office 365 and the G Suite, meaning that now, as well as being able to monitor for business email compromise, we can also overlay within the email a warning banner that says sure, we're not convinced that this is the person they say they are. So add a layer of caution to what you do next. And then finally, we have up here, we have account. What this allows you to do is effectively lock Twitter accounts that, as you see, have been targeted with an indicator of compromise or have been taken over. So if you start seeing a Twitter account has started tweeting out inappropriate, profanity-laden, emoji-laden tweets, you can hide the initial tweet and hide any subsequent tweets. And of course, you can lock the account, which you can then email someone to say that the account has now been locked. And then you can work with ZeroFox to get that account unlocked as well. Now, as we look down some of the other sort of use cases, we've got account discovery that goes out and finds accounts. We have cyber attack that will look for those open ports we spoke about previously and those expired certificates, as well as looking for indicators of compromise in various languages. It's actually worth noting that the ZeroFox platform is Unicode compliant. That means that if you can get any language into the platform via the UI you see here from your keyboard, we can go and search for those words and terms. We have multi-tiered approaches that we can use various other sort of search terms along with that first term to sort of restrict and limit the amount of false positives we may get. We can then start going out and looking for DLP and sensitive data that's going to do exactly. That's going to look for bank identification numbers, those BIN numbers we spoke about, email addresses and passwords that maybe have been compromised, credit card numbers, and so on. Okay. We then have domain security that you see here that allows you to look at full string and substring matches based on domains being live or otherwise along the way, and that's going to take in the configuration that we set up within the domain entity. It's worth noting as well, we spoke about Unicode just now. We also use Unicode to look for our sort of domains by querying the registrars and then going out and querying if there is a live domain there. We also use OCR and image analysis to look for logos and to look for intellectual property that might be out there. If you are using our email security, then obviously we switch on the rules accordingly for abuse email box, DMARC configurations, and obviously business email compromise as well. The Fox threats is kind of an ongoing real-time update of intelligence, and everybody gets access to that as we go through. Fraud, scams, and piracy looking for fraudulent job postings, counterfeit goods across marketplaces, and sort of piracy and scams along the way. Fake coupons and money flipping being very big within here for money flipping being very big within financial services, and fake coupons being very big within sort of retail, that we don't want to sort of be propagating that on social media. One of our big use cases is around impersonation, and this is where, if you remember back to the configuration where we said we validate things as we go down the list, we can validate that and we can view that based on just image, just name. We can view that based on name and bio, name and image, and name, image, and bio as well. So we can use the configuration we've set up and switch on the rules accordingly to make sure we hit that correctly. We have the inappropriate use section, which effectively is more like sentiment analysis, looking for drug references, intolerance, negative sentiment, profanity in various languages as well. Another key one for us is the malicious links and files that go some way to look for malware, phishing, spam, and of course these particular use cases can also have the various hides, blocks and deletes added to them as well. So in real time, if we analyze a shortened link or a full link and see that it's going somewhere dangerous, we can block it, we can hide it, we can delete it along the way. We can look for mobile applications based on the various app stores like Android and iOS, and of course we can then start sort of building in that location protection by looking for various terms and phrases within a geofenced space. We have regulatory compliance rules that allow us to look for, various FISEC, FINRA, HIPAA, PCI compliances that we might need to follow. And we recently, as I mentioned earlier on, added in our remote workforce section that allows us to look for various kind of exposed Zoom meetings or Zoom links out there, along with things like Slack as well. And then very, very finally, the vulnerabilities would link into the vulnerabilities that we spoke about in the alpha team way back, allowing us to now alert based on those vulnerabilities being discovered and being placed out there in the wild. So essentially, that's all the input that we've spoken about now. And we need to go and look at the output, which really starts within our alerts. So as you will see, I've logged into the alerts console. It's pretty similar to any other alerts console you would have seen. You can navigate up and down, you can navigate left and right, and when you actually click on one of the alerts on the left hand side, it opens up more of a requester. Kind of gives it that look and feel of an email client if you're surfing the web. Of course, you'll see at the top here you can sort based on risk rating, which we have done already, and then of course you can filter based on any of the columns above, and I've just filtered out a few here to focus in on our Tony Stark, CEO, and a couple of other ones that I think are interesting along the way. You'll see here, obviously, we've got some that are high, some are medium, and some are low, and a couple of informational ones at the bottom there as well. It's interesting if we go and look at one of these informational ones just for now, that our artificial intelligence, our machine learning, image analysis, and OCR are running across our alerts. And as you see here, granted this is my demo, but it's showing me a nice red box to say that we've actually picked up an image of a gun. And as you see here, the actual alert was weapon detection as well. So based on this being real, based on where this is, we could obviously hit request takedown or any of these other actions, some of which are could be predefined, as you've already seen on the rule itself, based on the criteria there. But while we're in the alerts console, I'm just going to show you here. It gives you a bit of information around when and where this alert was detected. The rule that was triggered. We also tell you the rule that was triggered at the top of the page here. But what's neat is we can link back out to the rule, we can link back out to the policy, and of course we can link over here back out to the entity in question. You'll see the content type in this case was a search query. We can add free-form notes. We need to have this removed. And then that's then visible to any of the analysts that are in the system here. We can also add tagging, which you can then use in as another column within the alerts to filter. And the main thing that I think we need to focus on here is we do pull back the all-important metadata, which is our proof that this goes against the terms of service in some way or another. And when we hit that request takedown, all of that information can be populated up to, in this case, Twitter. If I drill back out of this screen here, I'm just going to go back a step. I'm going to go up some of these high alerts. I just want to show you, where we found some interesting information. It's worth noting, obviously I've picked up on domains here as well, and you see we've found full string matches within domains. We show you the domain in question that has been found. We also give you the IP address that resolves to that, and this one being particularly dangerous, we also give you the MX records as well. So this actually means that this particular domain has a mail exchange server configured, so it can actually send email. So if we go back to some of the ecosystem that we're trying to bring down, we could potentially request this for takedown via the registrars, the domain owners, and so on and so forth. But we could also request that the phishing domains be taken down, and of course business email compromise and some of our email functionality could also go some way to protect against this criteria as well. DLP and usernames, passwords that have been discovered. We do this one of two ways. As you see here, we can actually pull back a list of email addresses, and in this case hashed passwords. But some of you, if you were quick to notice, some of the stuff we had down here right at the bottom of the screen was also part of our compromised credentials which is part of our data breaches data source. So they are different data sources there. One is the data breaches one, and as you see here, it goes and uses the configured email address within the entity to see it, and in this case it's been part of a data breach within the Heroes of Newarth, which happened at this date and affected this many people. The reason I'm showing you these two very different attack vectors is this one here is DLP and usernames and passwords that have been discovered in this case on a pastebin site. The beauty is pastebin does actually have a terms of service, so we could actually get this taken down, which in some ways is kind of helpful and allows us to move through that process. Just have a look at some of the other stuff we have here. Credit card numbers, again, this time searching on the dark web. You see there we've got, credit card numbers, expiry dates and everything. Being that's on the dark web, we can't really get that taken down, but we could certainly investigate and I guess advise Tony Stark and Stark Industries that this needed to be taken down. We can also look, as you see here, on the Tor network, and we can see there where there's information that's out there on the Tor network. A couple of other alerts which I think are very interesting within this demonstration is our ability now to also work with deepfakes. We have a deepfake engine. In fact, we have two, MesoNet and MouthNet, as you see here. And our artificial intelligence wrapper has actually discovered the language as being in English and has discovered those two particular criteria as pretty high. And when you look at it as a whole, our artificial intelligence is 75% confident that this is a deep fake. In fact, what's really interesting, if we can, wherever you see a link, I haven't said this yet, wherever you see a link, you can actually browse out to the location in question, as long as it's not a domain, because we don't want you getting phished or have malware on your machine. What's really interesting about this particular example is it was actually it's a real deep fake that's out there. This gentleman here, the Fakening, does his own deep fakes. This is a combination of Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Rock, I think it is, or one of the actors from there, and put the two together, made this particular deepfake. It just so happens that it works very nicely within our demo environment. To make that even more interesting, we actually ran the rule set that we developed for this, and we found this, so we've kind of used it as it's out there within the demonstration. So that's quite an interesting snippet of information there. So yeah, if I was to look at an impersonation, I'm going to take one of the impersonating accounts that we have here. Again, as I mentioned before, we can browse out to these accounts. We don't see the point in pulling back, masses and masses of Twitter and Facebook and, LinkedIn data. So we can see this is obviously a fake. We know this is a fake because we added the official account in a while back at the beginning of this presentation. So we know this isn't the real account. Of course, we can request takedown, and that, again, all important metadata will be pushed up to the API, back to, in this case, Twitter. The interesting is, if we do request a takedown and you haven't automatically subscribed to every single takedown status update, you can choose the ones you want to have status updates for, and this will send you an email every time the status changes from investigating, to in progress, to open, closed, accepted, denied, whatever it might be. And of course, that is further reflected in our Remediations Dashboard that we'll come on to pretty quickly through this demonstration as well. The final one that I really want to sort of focus on, and I think this one is really interesting, is this one here. It's a Malware Link. You see that we've got a lot of information that we're putting back on the screen, but I'm actually going to browse out to this particular sort of tweet that's out there in the public domain, and I'm going to, in fact, I think I'm going to zoom in on this one so you can see it a bit closer up. You see here this Brooke Mona character. Says that she's a self-confessed New York City girl who loves photography. It's a pretty girl in the avatar picture, the profile picture there, aren't they always? And she has, in this scenario, followed our CEO, Tony Stark. They have, after that, can only have sort of built up what can only be called a social relationship. She has liked some of his tweets. She has retweeted some of his tweets. It has got to that stage where he does not see her as a threat anymore because he kind of feels like he knows her. And of course, you have to realize this would never have happened with email. In the days of email, now we have so many technologies in place to block these, malware, spam, phishing emails coming in, that it wouldn't have got through to the email client. And of course, if it had got through to the email client, we like to think that our CEO would have been, educated enough, shall we say, not to click on that link or not sort of look at it in any real context. But in this environment, he's probably going to be surfing Twitter from his Learjet, let's say on his mobile device, or he might be using his laptop on Wi-Fi. Either way, he's going to see this and think, what was it that I said this time on camera that was particularly funny? It's going to a shortened link, which is obviously very difficult for him to know where it's going. It looks great in Twitter, but it's very hard to sort of diagnose where it's going. So he's going to click on it. And it's probably going to take him, based on the context, to a very well-crafted Vimeo or YouTube fake page. He's going to have to log in, and it's going to harvest off his personal identifiable information, his username and password, which has now reduced the amount of credential combinations that our attacker has to now check in order to maybe utilize this to brute force or get some other access into the network. What could be worse is that it downloads an MP4, or it puts some bad code on his machine, or it's embedded in the MP4 maybe, to infect his machine. He's going to be completely unawares because it's probably going to show him a very silly video of him doing something, and you have to remember they've probably already tried this before and seen it be successful with him, so realised he would be prime for doing it again. He's then going to walk that back in through his $1 million perimeter of Stark Industries, the Jarvis network or whatever, and he's going to plug his laptop back into the local area network, or it's going to connect to Wi-Fi. As soon as it connects, it's going to start infecting the local devices around it. And of course, the absolute worst case is it's going to potentially set up some sort of command and control with a C2 server. Then they've got their own backdoor into Stark Industries. With ZeroFox, this wouldn't happen. Not only would we expand that shortened link and detonate that shortened link within our sandbox environment, we also run it through a couple of third-party checks. And if it fails all of those checks, or a combination of those checks, we will block it, we will hide it, we will delete it. And of course, remember, if we block it, we're also blocking Brooke Mona from posting back on Tony Stark's wall. Or direct messaging, or however this this campaign has been launched. So in a nutshell, that's some of the ideas around how ZeroFox, the alerting console, can work. One of the things that I haven't mentioned is, of course, as we've seen though, these alerts can be emailed to you, but it can also be pushed via our API. We can push this information out of our API to whatever solution you're using, be that a SIM, a tip, a SAW. And we have many connectors, application connectors, and of course, worst case, we can always push this out via syslog as well. So that's kind of the the alerts at a sort of a high level. As I mentioned, we have the Remediations Dashboard that is alongside here as well. And that's going to start showing you, as you see here, a lot of remediations, how long they've been sort of in that process, in the duration for takedown. In fact, you'll see here we also have, we start on the left-hand side, we have the type of takedown they are they standard or premium? And standard ones are social media takedowns, premium are pretty much anything else. The status, were they successful? Have they been submitted? Are they being investigated by an analyst further? And of course the entity that they fall within. A link to that particular account to see if it's there or not. And a duration, since you've hit the takedown button, how long has this been sort of in progress, shall we say. It shows you the data source that they are on, and obviously the date that they were requested. The final one there about submissions also refers to the fact that, and highlights the fact, and again it's a good feedback loop that basically says that we will show you how long things are taking because the social networks don't actually have an SLA for this kind of for any of their takedowns, they take as long as they take in scheme of things. We want to feed that back. Now, we generally have a higher confidence rating with the social networks. We generally get sort of I would say a better quality of service, and so our takedowns generally take within sort of Instagram can take a couple of minutes. Twitter can take a few days. Domains can take significantly longer based on the bigger parties involved and so on and so forth. But it just gives you that sort of closure that it's not us holding on to it. It's still in progress, but it's potentially with the social networks. And then finally, of course, at the far end here, we have our reports as well. We have a reporting console where you can go in and you can generate your own reports. You see there we currently have 10 reports. We have an executive and technical level report, a takedown report, a brand entity, a location entity, an executive entity report, an email analysis report, an alert detail report, a platform configuration report, and a report for basically dumping data to CSV. It allows you to export the data to CSV and do whatever you would like to do with that data from that CSV document. It's very easy to go in and configure. You go in, you have to give the report a name as such, and then you select an option, be that a date range like last month in these senses here, or a custom date range from a certain date in time to a certain date in time. When you've done that and you're happy with what it is that you've done, you can then hit the Run Report button. The beauty with the ZeroFox reporting engine is you don't have to now wait here for this report to generate. This report will be available within a few seconds anyway, because it's not particularly big. But ultimately, you can go about your own work. You can carry on with your own day, and it will send you an email as soon as this report is generated. That's because, of course, we don't know how much data, how long you want to wait for this report to like to appear. Now, of course, if I was to come in here and view that report, I can now open that report and show you the information within. So once that report is ready and downloaded, it's very simple. You can just go and view that report. It generates it as a PDF, and the sort of information it's going to give you is going to be that executive summary, the amount of data that's been analyzed, the total number of alerts and remediated content. The sort of information that an executive level report would want to have. Alerts by distribution of network, by rule, and then obviously interesting information around content remediation, median time to resolution, and so on and so forth. In a nutshell, that's kind of what the reports generate, and that's really a tour of the ZeroFox platform. I really do appreciate your time today. I appreciate you staying with me for this presentation. And if there's anything further that you need from ZeroFox, please reach out to your ZeroFox team, either myself, Matt Chinnery, or on the sales side, my colleague, Gabe Goldhirsch. Thanks for your time and have a great day.